The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am in my 7th year working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. The World Series is set. The NBA is back, and the NHL is back. I know you're a big hockey guy. Let's put you on record for a Stanley Cup prediction.
Yeah, this is like the heavenly time of sports for me. I'm going to go Stanley Cup prediction. I'm going to take a team hasn't won since 1967. We talk about these trends. They end. I'm going with the Toronto Maple Leafs, 11-1. I know I'm going to get some hate for it, but they finally broke that playoff win. They got in last year. Their division's down this year. They brought in some toughness. I'm liking the Leafs this year, but as we know, NFL is king, and that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. You see, with everything else happening across all the other sports, the NFL does not want to cede an inch of ground in the TV ratings, and we've got a week 8 with no teams on bye coming up.
Yeah, big week for us here, and we are going to jump right into our first segment where we will be grading the script writers and how they did for episode 7 of this NFL season. And the Dolphins once again got crushed when they stepped up in class. Miami's offense scored only 10 points, with the other 7 coming on a pick 6. I mean, are we just going to see this Dolphins team beat bad teams and then get crushed in the playoffs?
I really think it comes down to the health of that offensive line. I mean, we just see them get battered in the trenches when they played the Bills and Eagles. Miami's offensive line surrendered 10 pressures on Sunday night in Philadelphia and 10 pressures in that game in Buffalo after allowing only 4.4 pressures per game against all the other opponents. And what happened last Sunday night was when Isaiah Wynn went out, their starting left guard, they were down 3 starters. And so we've talked about left tackle Teron Armstead on this podcast before, but he's going to be out again this week along with Wynn. But the Dolphins will likely be getting back starting center Connor Williams, who ranked 2nd in pass blocking efficiency the first 5 weeks, but he's been out nursing a groin injury. And Williams is going to be crucial this week to set the protections with Tua versus a Patriots defense that has a 47% blitz rate. And Tua, hasn't been great against the blitz this year. His yards per attempt against the blitz is just 75% of his yards per attempt against the standard pass rush. That's 31st in the NFL. So hopefully with Williams back in the lineup, he can kind of pick up those exotic blitzes that we know Belichick is going to send on Sunday.
Yeah, and we saw Jalen Hurts needed a brace on his left leg in the second half, and then he hobbled off the field after the win. Is that going to be a problem for them?
Yeah, I mean, we had the Jalen Hurts prop last week with rushing, and it did seem like he was limited in his mobility. I mean, it looked like he was running out there with ankle weights on. And so I don't know. I mean, his lack of mobility is definitely going to hurt Philly's offense. Obviously not on those, tush push brotherly shove plays because, he just has to get a yard there. But pocket mobility or just scrambling could be an issue, especially because the offensive line has been vulnerable. Philly's line has surrendered 10 plus pressures in back-to-back games with all-pro right tackle Lane Johnson fighting through a high ankle sprain and starting right guard Cam Jurgens out with a foot sprain. And this week they face a Washington defense ranked 7th in pass rate or in sack rate.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the big trade the Eagles made this week? I mean, they traded for Titans safety Kevin Byard. I mean, they were sending Terrell Edmonds plus the 2024 5th and 6th round picks to Tennessee in this deal.
Well, Byard is a borderline all-pro caliber safety, so that's a big in-season move by general manager Howie Roseman. Byard has 9 interceptions and 8 more pass breakups since the start of 2021, and our metrics indicate that Byard is 0.6 points better than Edmonds. And Philadelphia's defense ranks 10th in explosive pass rate allowed so far this season. I think they'll move into top 5 with Byard playing that deep free safety role. Now, Philadelphia's defense is surrendering 0.55 EPA per target to tight ends. That's 30th. And I don't think that Byard solves that problem because he plays more in that deep middle of the field. And so, I mean, you could still see Logan Thomas for the Commanders have a decent week in this game, even though they trade for the all-pro caliber safety in Byard.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got the injury watch, and it looks like Tannehill has a high ankle sprain, so he's going to be out. I mean, what should we expect at QB for the Titans this week?
Well, Vrabel says that both backups, Malik Willis and Will Levis, are going to play. I think this is mostly gamesmanship. And we should see the rookie Levis get the majority of snaps under center. And Tannehill is 3.2 points better than Levis by our numbers. This is just a really tough first NFL start for the second round rookie, as he's unlikely to get any support from his ground game because the Falcons defense ranks first in the league in EPA per rush allowed. And then Levis is probably going to face some collapsing pockets too, because Atlanta's interior defenders, David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett, have combined for 35 pressures, and Tennessee's interior offensive line is to blame for 60% of the Titans' pressures this year, and center Aaron Brewer ranks fifth worst in pass blocking efficiency.
Yeah, and what's going on with the Browns QB situation? We're seeing Deshaun come in and out last week.
Yeah, he's just been an enigma. It's been it's crazy to watch ever since he got to Cleveland. Coming off the suspension, and he was bad last year. There's a lot of talk this offseason. The roster looks good. Quarterback's the question mark, and then he's just been in and out this year. I mean, threw 2 interceptions last week before being checked for a concussion, and then he was cleared, not have a concussion, but he didn't get put back in the game. Now he remains on the sideline, and then now they're saying that the shoulder is still an issue. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know when we're going to be able to see Watson. Backup PJ Walker he's been a backup type quarterback thus far. He's only averaging 4.8 yards per pass play. So if the Browns want to make a playoff push, they're going to need Watson to come back at some point. But right now, it just doesn't seem clear what even the problem is.
Yeah, and we saw the Packers were missing some key pieces on defense last week, but it looks like they might be getting some guys back this week. How's this going to impact their game?
Yeah, they gave up 6.5 yards per pass play to the Broncos last week, but they didn't have cornerback Jair Alexander or linebacker Devondre Campbell, and both of those guys should be back on the field this week. Alexander will replace backup cornerback Carrington Valentine, who allowed 89 yards into his coverage, ranking 9th most among Week 7 cornerbacks, and Devondre Campbell is one of the best pass defending linebackers in the NFL, allowing 2.3 fewer yards per target than his backup Isaiah McDuffie.
Yep, looks like the 49ers will be without Purdy, Debo, and Trent Williams. What's this offense going to look like under Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I've got Darnold about 3 points worse than Purdy, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see Darnold look solid in his first start. We talked all summer about how it would be interesting if Darnold got into a game, and this isn't the worst game for him to get into just from a matchup standpoint for the weapons he does have on the field. And that's especially if they do get Trent Williams, who I'd say is 50-50 for this game. So let's look at the matchups. George Kittle has a 26% target rate and is averaging 79 yards per game in the 4 games without Deebo Samuel on the field since the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey last season. And Cincinnati's defense ranks 26th in EPA per target to tight ends. So I like Kittle in this game. We talked in the offseason about how the Bengals lost both their starting safeties. And so this is a game that Kittle can certainly exploit the middle of Cincinnati's defense. And then the Bengals rank 26th in pass success rate allowed to running backs. So you've got to imagine that there's going to be plenty of screens to Christian McCaffrey, and McCaffrey will also be a force on the ground as Cincinnati's defense ranks 29th in EPA per rush allowed. So I love the matchups for Kittle and McCaffrey. Certainly, if Trent Williams comes back and Darnold can get some decent pass protection, we could see Sam Darnold look pretty good in a Kyle Shanahan offense.
Yeah, they were hyping up Sam Darnold this summer. They're saying he's one of the best throwers of the football that they've seen. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm interested to see how that one goes, but let's move over to the Jets. Are they going to have both starting cornerbacks back after beating the Eagles without them?
I would think so. I mean, Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed had concussions, and through the bye week, that'll be plenty of days for them to clear protocol. And Sauce ranks 9th in yards per cover snap allowed, and DJ Reed ranks 10th in yards per cover snap allowed. 2 top 10 corners they've got on the outside there. So we'll see Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor, whoever the Giants have under center, look to the middle of the field, where Darren Waller ranks 7th in EPA per target among tight ends, and the Jets defense ranks 28th in success rate to tight ends this year.
Yeah, and it looks like the Jags are getting back reinforcements in the secondary. Is this going to help contain that Steelers passing attack?
I think it will. I mean, Jaguars get back starting cornerback Tyson Campbell and backup Monteric Brown is surrendering 8.1 yards per target compared to Campbell's 6.0 yards per target allowed. So they've got Campbell to line up across from George Pickens, along with Andre Cisco, the safety, who has 3 interceptions, second in the NFL. He'll be patrolling the deep area. So with Campbell, in locked up with Pickens and then Cisco over the top, I'm not sure that Kenny Pickett will be able to hit those deep shots to George Pickens. We actually saw Cisco exit last game in the third quarter, but it was just cramps, so I think he'll be all right. So that's 2 solid guys in Jacksonville's secondary to lock down George Pickens. So I think Kenny Pickett is going to have to check the ball down quite a bit in the rain in Pittsburgh on Sunday.
Yeah, and we're seeing the Panthers O-line finally come together and as they're getting a little bit healthier here.
Yeah, so this is a little bit perplexing to me. So first thing to note about the Panthers is they are making a play caller switch. Frank Reich, head coach, has given up play calling duties to offensive coordinator Thomas Brown. And so Bryce Young is hoping that will lower his pressure rate. Bryce Young has faced the 9th highest pressure rate thus far. And we've seen that because the Panthers have had struggles on the interior offensive line. Guard Brady Christensen suffered a bicep injury in the season opener, and he was ultimately ruled out for the year. And then Austin Corbett has been steadily working back from a torn ACL that occurred in the regular season finale last year. But Corbett should start this week. So Corbett ranked 9th in pass blocking efficiency last season. So that's a big pickup for the Panthers' interior offensive line. Now, their other guard, Calvin Throckmorton, ranks 11th in pass blocking efficiency this year. So if you just have the offensive line with Corbett, Throckmorton, and then Taylor Moton and Ike Ekwonu at tackles, that offensive line grades out as borderline top 10 in my metrics. So that's pretty optimistic for the Panthers offensive line. However, it seems like they don't want to keep Throckmorton out there. It seems like they're going to bench him, put Corbett in his place. So not a huge upgrade because Throckmorton already ranks 11th in pass blocking efficiency this year. So Corbett can't be that much better. And then they're going to give more reps to left guard rookie Chandler Zavala, who ranks last in pass blocking efficiency out of the 54 qualifying guards in the NFL. And this week, Zavala is going to line up across from Texans interior defender Malik Collins, who ranks 18th in pressure. So, if they want to give this rookie reps, I mean, the Panthers, could be justified in doing that because they're trying to build him up for being a potential future starter on this offensive line. But currently, their offensive line is not going to be that as good as it could be because he has been so bad this year and he's in an unfavorable matchup on Sunday.
Yeah, it's kind of weird considering they don't even have their first round pick. But we see the Broncos edge rusher Baron Browning had missed the first 6 weeks due to knee surgery, but he was back on the field against the Packers. What'd you see from him?
Yeah, so Browning got a limited workload last week, but he led the Broncos with 36 pressures last season. I think he'll be getting even more pass rushing snaps this week, and he has a favorable matchup across from Kansas City left tackle Donovan Smith, whose 6 pressures allowed last week were second most among all Week 7 tackles. And I would say that Smith is, if there was a weak link on the Chiefs' offensive line, Smith would be that guy. So it's a good time for Baron Browning to come back for Denver's defense.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got public opinion with me, and as always, I've been getting the inside scoop of what the fans are saying, and it never fails to leave you with hot takes. Every time the public gets their mindset on something, it seems to always change, but this week, the people are asking, are the Lions frauds?
Yeah, I mean, they got absolutely destroyed last week in Baltimore. The outdoor woes really struck Jared Goff again as he averaged just 4.4 yards per pass play in that win last week. And Goff now has 5 away games without a touchdown since the start of last season compared to only 2 road games with 2+ touchdowns. So it's certainly a lot different for Jared Goff on the road under offensive coordinator Ben Johnson than it has been when they've been at home in the Dome. But they will be in the Dome this week, where he's averaging 7.8 yards per pass play this year. So I think it's going to look a lot different. Great bounce back opportunity for Jared Goff. And he will look to the slot if Raiders starting cornerback starting nickelback Nate Hobbs remains out because Amon-Ra ranks 13th in success rate, and Raiders backup nickelback Amik Robinson is surrendering a 7.4% explosive pass rate, ranking 39th out of 43 qualifying nickelbacks. And then another thing that I like for Detroit's offensive bounce back this week is the Raiders defense is basically just Max Crosby. He's an incredible player, one of the best in the NFL, and all the other guys are just meh. And so Crosby is responsible for a league high 41% of his defensive pressures, this year. That's almost half the pressures from one guy. Completely insane. But this week, Crosby's going to be shut down because he's going to be lining up against potentially the best right tackle in the NFL, Penei Sewell, who leads the league in pass blocking efficiency.
Yes, Jimmy G coming back this week, and what do you think about Detroit's defense here?
So on the Jimmy front, I think I'm expecting him to play, but we'll certainly have to monitor that. And whether it's Jimmy, Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, I do not like their pass protection this week in this particular matchup. It's kind of the opposite of the Crosby situation I just laid out, because Detroit's best defender, edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson, who has 42 pressures this year, second in the NFL, will be lining up across from the weak point of that Las Vegas offensive line. So right tackle Jermaine Eluemunor has surrendered 5 sacks, second most in the NFL. And then it was so bad that they've now just started rotating him with backup Thayer Munford. And so those two are definitely going to struggle across from Hutchinson's this week, and that's going to help Detroit's defense quite a bit on Monday night.
Yeah, Hutch has been a fun player to watch this year. He's been an absolute stud. But let's move over to our next segment. We've got stock up, stock down. And whose stock are you buying right now?
Right now, I'm buying Patriots offensive line stock. So they've made a number of different changes last week in that win over the Bills that I think will help them moving forward. First of all, they benched right tackle Vedrian Lowe, who ranked second worst in pass blocking efficiency, and they bumped out guard Mike Onwenu, who conceded just 1 pressure in his first game at tackle last week. And they also benched guard Antonio Mafi, who ranked second worst in pass blocking efficiency among guards. So they bring out Lowe and Mafi. They bump Onwenu out to tackle. And then Mac Jones, 2.1 second average time to throw versus the Bills, was the second quickest by any quarterback this season. So that fast release, along with the shuffling along the offensive line, might have fixed the Patriots' pass protection. The Patriots ranked 29th in pass blocking efficiency heading into week 7, but I think they'll be more like league average after all of these changes. And we saw that. I mean, last year, New England's offensive line finished 16th in pass blocking efficiency last season. So I think that it will go a long way for this offense if Mac Jones can continue getting the ball out fast and getting those terrible, terrible offensive linemen on the bench.
All right. Well, who's got their stock trending down for you this week?
Falcons offense for me. I mean, it was a slog for them. To be fair to Atlanta, they did get the ball into the red zone quite a bit, and fumbles killed them last week against Tampa Bay, but it's not looking good for them on Sunday. Vrabel is 5-0 against the spread coming off of a bye week, and I think his defense sets up perfectly to stifle what Atlanta tries to do on offense. So we know it all starts with the ground game. Atlanta leads the NFL in run play rate adjusted for situation, but Tennessee's defense ranks 5th in EPA per rush after ranking 1st last year. Mike Vrabel's teams always are great in the front 7 stopping the run. And then the Titans scheme on defense is built to stop quarterbacks like Desmond Ridder. Tennessee ranks 7th in use of standard pass rush, so they don't like to blitz a lot, and they rank 7th in man coverage rate. And Ridder has been terrible. He's been 27th in terms of his yards per attempt against a standard pass rush compared to a blitz, and 31st with his yards per attempt against man coverage compared to zone. So Ridder, not good when he doesn't get a blitz look and he just has to read, with 7 players in coverage. He's also not good against man. So that's exactly what Tennessee does, and they're not going to get any relief from the ground game because we know Tennessee is going to be able to stop the run. So it's just not looking good for the Falcons offense this week.
Yeah, it was a weird situation what was going on with Bijan last week. I mean, pretty much no awareness that he was going to be sitting out, but it looks like he's going to be good to go this week. But let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got the weather of the week. How's it looking out there?
Well, worst weather of this week is in Miami, where it looks like there's going to be strong winds and some rain. So neither quarterback, Mac or Tua, has a strong arm. We could certainly see these offenses get stuck in the mud. And I mean, the Dolphins will just try and counter that with the ground game. They're leading the NFL in EPA per rush, but the Patriots rush defense is pretty solid. They're allowing just a 32% rush success rate, second in the league. So I think Mike McDaniel is going to try and make these throws easy on Tua in the wind, counter those Patriots blitzes we talked about earlier with the screen game. The Dolphins rank fourth with a 60% success rate on screens, and they're targeting running back, sixth most in the NFL. And New England's defense is surrendering a 50% pass success rate to running backs, which is 27th in the league. So looks like going to be a lot of screens from the Dolphins this week in that wet environment.
Yeah, not weather related, but I'm curious how you're going to handle the Jets at Giants home field advantage.
Yeah, Jets at Giants, but both teams basically staying at home, playing in the stadium that they're familiar with. I'm treating it like a neutral game. I'm not giving any home field advantage to the Giants because ultimately I don't think there's going to be an overwhelming amount of Giants fans there. I think it'll be, somewhat split. Could it be, 60-40? Maybe, but I don't think it's going to be overwhelming Giants home field, and there's no travel for either team. Both teams have the familiarity there at MetLife, so I'm treating it as a neutral game. We get this game, once every 4 years, and that's pretty much how I've handled it in the past.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our DraftKings player of the slate. Last week, you picked out Lamar Jackson, who went absolutely bonkers on the Lions with 357 yards passing and 4 total TDs. But who do you got lined up for us this week?
I've got Derek Carr at 5,500. So he's already gone over 20 points in the last 2 weeks, and this will be the easiest defense he's gone against. So this Indianapolis secondary is in complete disarray. Let's just go through it. The Colts cut starting cornerback Isaiah Rodgers after he picked up that year-long gambling suspension right before the season. And so they put out cornerback Darrell Baker in week 1 and week 2, but he surrendered 10.8 yards per target in the first 2 games. So they benched him because it was just atrocious out there. But then cornerback Dallas Flowers tore his Achilles. So he's out for the season. So they didn't want to put Baker back in because they knew he was bad. So they went with 7th round rookie Jalen Jones. But now Indianapolis starting cornerback Juju Brents has suffered a quad injury and he'll be out this week. So that's going to force Baker back on the field, which they've been trying like crazy to not have him on the field. And then, you got Baker on one side, you got 7th round rookie on the other side. That's going to be a disaster against these Saints wide receivers, particularly Chris Olave, who has a league high 19 targets with at least 20 air yards. You got to imagine he's going to get plenty of deep bombs this week. And then underneath, it looks pretty good for Derek Carr as well. Alvin Kamara ranks 3rd in yards per route run, and the Colts are surrendering a 51% pass success rate to running backs. That's 28th in the league. So I like what Carr can do deep on Sunday. I like what he can do underneath. This Colts secondary, they've been trying like crazy to keep Baker off the field, but that's not going to happen this week. So give me Derek Carr, DraftKings player of the slate.
I love it. I love it. Maybe we should play the alternate total for the Colts game again at over 78 points. Maybe. All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got our prime time preview, and on Sunday night, we've got a battle of the 2-win teams between the Chicago Bears and the LA Chargers. I mean, on paper, these rosters don't look relatively close, and it might not be helping that the D2 legend himself, Tyson Bagent, is leading the Bears. What did you see from him last week?
Well, I mean, the Bears beat the Raiders by 18 points in Tyson Bagent's first start, but I was not impressed by the undrafted rookie. Bagent had just a 2.1 yard average depth of target, making the shortest of any quarterback this season. And he's averaging only 5.1 yards per play, and he's not proven that he can beat a defense deep that doesn't just give him wide open checkdowns like the Raiders did last week.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like the opposite of what DJ Moore needs from a QB.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, DJ Moore ranks 6th in EPA per target this year, but that's mostly because he has 9 deep receptions this season. That's second in the NFL. And he did not get a target on a pass with 20-plus air yards last week with Bagent under center.
Yeah, do you think the Bears O-line is going to be able to hold up against the Chargers this week?
So, Bears rookie right tackle Darnell Wright is a nice run blocker, but he's dealing with a shoulder injury, and he's been a little bit more suspect in pass blocking. He surrendered a sack last week to Max Crosby, and Wright will get some snaps lined up across from Chargers edge defender Tuli Tulipoto, who ranks 18th in pass rushing efficiency. And then also, we've seen the Chargers work Joey Bosa back into the mix. He got more than half the snaps last week after being limited the past few games due to a hamstring injury. So whether it's Tuli or Joey against Wright, I don't think it's going to go well for that rookie right tackle. But on the other side, Chicago will likely get back starting left tackle Braxton Jones, and backup Larry Borum ranked 5th worst in pass blocking efficiency out of 58 qualifiers. So that'll be an upgrade for him. We'll see Braxton Jones battle this week across from Khalil Mack, who's 28 pressures, ranked 14th among edge defenders.
What are the Chargers going to need to do on offense to find success?
Well, the Bears are allowing just a 28% rush success rate the last 3 weeks. That's 3rd in the NFL. So I think Austin Eckler is going to have to do his damage as a receiver, as Chicago's defense ranks 30th in pass success rate allowed to running backs. So not a lot of handoffs, but we could see some Texas routes from Eckler. We could see some screens to Eckler because it's just been a bit of a slog for Herbert. He's averaging just 5.9 yards per pass play the last 3 games without starting center Corey Linsley and wide receiver Mike Williams.
Yeah, I remember you being concerned when Linsley went out. I mean, how's his backup holding up?
It's not good. Backup center Will Clapp has been allowing a league-high 8% pressure rate since week 4. 8% for centers is absolutely atrocious, and we typically see Linsley in the top 3 in the NFL in pass blocking efficiency. So the gap between those two guys is massive.
What about the receivers without Mike Williams, though? How have they been?
Well, backup receiver Joshua Palmer is averaging 0.48 EPA per target fewer than Mike Williams. So it certainly hasn't replaced the efficiency from Williams, even though we see Palmer getting a decent amount of yards each game. Now, Keenan Allen ranks 8th in EPA per target this year. He's certainly benefited from Williams being off the field, but Chicago is looking at least better at nickelback now than they were for most of the season, because they got starting nickelback Kyler Gordon back, and he's allowing 0.78 yards per cover snap fewer than backup Greg Stroman did in weeks 2 through 6 when Gordon was out. So we look at this. Our model favors the Chargers by 10.5 with a predicted total of 44.0. So a little bit of a lean to the Chargers there, a little bit of a lean to the under, but nothing. We didn't make an official play on this game.
All right, well, let's look at our primetime prop. Your props are 4 and 3. What are you going to go with here on Sunday night?
I'm going to go with Bagent under 203.5 passing yards. So we see this prop listed 20 yards higher than it was last week, even though he threw for just 162 yards against the Raiders. And those were easy yards. I mean, his average completion was only 2.3 yards from the line of scrimmage. So the Chargers are going to try and make Bagent an actual NFL passer this week instead of just giving him everything underneath. And I don't think that Bagent is going to step up to the task. I mean, remember when everyone got super fired up for FCS quarterback Ben DiNucci for that Sunday night game in the COVID season? Then he went out there and threw for only 3 yards per pass play, and the Cowboys lost 9-23 in Philadelphia. I think we could see something very similar for this primetime game, and I think that this is the end of the line for Tyson Bagent.
Yeah, the Bagent story has been great so far, and I know the media is going to run with it for the rest of the week until Sunday night when it probably comes to a crashing end, but I think that will do it for the podcast this week. As a reminder, the college basketball service will be starting soon, so head to the website if you're interested.
Yes, if you want to sign up, be prepared to bet daily every morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time from November through March. Last season, we sent out over 1,000 bets. So you got to be there every morning for those releases.
Yeah, and the second half of season packages are available for NFL and college football. You can get all of these and the free analysis at drbobsports.com, and we will be back next Friday. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe.